million revenue over the year to us.
And there's been a change sizable some time ago.
And do you have a sense yet of what June is going to hit for the May-June bill?
We do not. We just know that we've had a very wet May, and so far this month we are above average in rainfall. We've started the meter reading, so based on that, I do not expect a high revenue month, but we do not have a projection.
The meter readings have started, and they'll be reading the meters, and water consumption will have occurred during the month of April. Is that correct? As part of the meter readings that they're doing now?
Since the meter readings in April, yes.
Yeah. So how is the accounting department going to address a different rate for the water prior to May 1st?
Based on our resolution and the timing of our approval, that it will be billed at the new rates.
So even though the effective rate increase is May 1st,
Because
water
we're all
consumed prior to that is going to be billed at the new rate?
All of our customers was informed that the rate increase was effective after the meter readings in April. And the intention of this board was that those meter readings from therefore would be billed at the new rate. That was my understanding of the intention of this board. So there is no planned adjustment. We have already made all those adjustments.
Now, we did have an extensive discussion in 2008 where the board made clear that we were not going to do another illegal retroactive billing. And and I've raised that concern with the other board members. I do not believe that it is either legal or appropriate for us to retroactively bill for water delivered prior to May 1st.
But what Commissioner Holloway, what Ms. Sipe just explained to us, that I'm not clear at all. She says that the board told the ratepayers that they're going to pay for water used before May 1st under the new rate, even though the rate is in effect on May 1st. That's the thing I can't understand, Ms. Sipe. When was that said? Or
Well, we sent out a notice at our last billing to all of our ratepayers, informing them that there would be a rate increase, and we also told them the effective date of that rate increase. That is not the same as what happened in 2008, and that was why the board asked us to correct it in 2008, which we did.
And technically, they're referring to the 2007 rate adjustment,
right,
not the 2008
No.
rate increase.
No, we delayed the 2000 rate increase to October because we did not want to do what had been done in 2007, which was bill for a period prior to the point the rate increase took effect. This rate increase took effect by the resolution May the 1st. And so I don't see any difference between this and the 2008 discussion. I distributed to the board the minutes, verbatim minutes from that meeting, which confirmed the discussion. And I'm particularly concerned because, and I confess, I didn't do the math. I thought I was voting for 14.25% across the board, and it turned out to be 42.75% increase in the base rate. And so, you know, I just think, I think it's illegal, and I think it's incredibly inappropriate to backdate and pick up April water delivered in a rate that was not effective until May the 1st.
Well, again, we notified the ratepayers, and I think think in your memo, you said we never corrected it, and we did.
We never corrected 2007.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
You didn't ever get money back?
I
Yes,
did.
yes, we gave a credit, I think.
We did issue a
Yeah.
credit. I would have to go back and determine, but it's been about a year ago,
Yeah.
and it was pennies to
It
most
was
of our
average 24
customers.
cents per customer or per ratepayer.
Okay, well, in that case, since it was quite a hot topic of discussion, I would certainly have appreciated as a board member being advised of that.
You voted on it. You mandated to staff because we came back to the board and we asked whether or not, because the amount was de minimis, we should go ahead and do that. I think we had quite the discussion. We got a legal opinion from Mr. Phillips. And the board said, yes, 25 cents to some people is a lot of money. And I think the issue is whether or not we cut a check. And fax staff came to us and said, why cut a check at all? Why don't you just credit their accounts? And that's what we did.
Well, you're gonna have to tell me when that was, because I've tracked that issue very carefully, and I have no recollection whatsoever of a vote on it. But in any case, if we took care of '07, then that's good. I'm glad we did the right thing. It doesn't make it okay to do the wrong thing now, just because we told the ratepayers we were going to do the wrong
Mrs.
thing.
Holloway, that is not what I just said. What I said is that we had notified the board this time, the ratepayers this time, and we did not notify the ratepayers in the same way as last time.
But my point is, it doesn't matter whether we notified them that we're gonna do something illegal or not. We shouldn't be doing
I guess I
it.
resent the term illegal.
So I guess
Well,
I have a
what else
question.
would you call it?
I have a question. So the date of the implementation of the increase, can you explain how that's being billed in regards to the previous month?
Which, you're talking for the month of April?
Exactly.
So the month of April
Because
billings was at the old rate.
Okay.
A vote was taken and approved prior to in meter readings in April, because you voted and approved the rate increase March 29th. So it was prior to any reading.
But on the resolution, I believe it says that it takes effect in May.
For all
May
billings
1st.
after the 1st of May, I believe is the wording.
No, it just says, why don't we get that, because this is a real issue. I'm sure you can bring us the resolution.
Do you have, does anyone have a copy of it?
I don't have it with me.
Karen should be able to lay her hands on it immediately, or
I
Dora.
would like to
She's the
finish
keeper
my
of the
report,
resolutions.
because this is at the end of the report.
Oh, do you have it in your, I'm sorry.
I don't have everything that you just asked
But
for,
you-
but it is on this.
Yeah, it is on the
last
agenda,
item.
right,
Yeah,
exactly,
it's-
so we'll
it's
move
here.
forward. But I do have a, so we'll wait till it's at the end. I do have a question for you though, Karen, and that's in regards to the revenue, that I guess it's on page 4, if you wouldn't mind going back. And this is the number that's on there, on the budgeted revenue, which says 6.2. Now, what I'm wondering is, where are you pulling that number from our budget? Because I'm not, it's
She's
not.
taken the general fund budgeted revenues
Mhm.
and is multiplied that by the 83.33.
Yes, but when I add, wait a minute, let's see. But my budget for the revenue, I believe it's at a higher number.
6.9, isn't it?
That is just water sales, is it? I don't have.
That's
the
just
budget.
water sales, that's my point. So the
But
general
that-
fund revenue is actually it's over 6.9 million, so I'm not,
I do not have that answer for you at this moment.
do you know, Lee?
I thought it would probably be on the 7 point.
Well, and this is water sales,
Because
is
that
that
would
right,
be-
Karen?
Yeah, because water
Karen,
revenue.
this is water, right?
This particular
And the
number
higher
right
number.
here
Because the adopted,
is general fund revenues,
yeah, which
more
should
than
be,
just water.
Okay, so it's total.
so, because in my book, it says it's like 10 million or so. but that's with including everything.
Ken, if you look at this.
I would think it would be on the 7.44,
I'll give you, should give you this.
which, within the handout that you were provided, it would be towards the back. It's the general fund schedule of revenues, budget, and actual, page 4 of item C. Or page 3, I think.
Page 3 of 5.
3 of 5. I don't have a calculator here, but I would think that we would take total revenue, which is 7.4 million. So it's water sales, service connections, service charges, other miscellaneous operating, the rent, non-operating interest.
So again, the numbers aren't adding up because it's showing that it's a revenue shortfall of 400, when it would actually be higher than that.
I'm not sure why you're saying that.
Well, from the adopted budget, the total revenue, and that's what I'm wondering where she's pulling the number from for when it says general fund revenue.
So
because-
you're saying where does the 6.2 come from? I believe it is the 7.4 at 83% because it's only 10 months worth of. She's trying to bring this down just so you understand where she gets it. 7.4 is for 12 months.
For the total general fund revenue.
Right.
Okay, so.
She's trying to bring it down
It's just for
into 10 months. So she would have multiplied or taken 83% of the $7.4 million of revenue. And saying, if we were on target according to the budget, according to how far we are to the budget year, we should have $6.2 million. Unfortunately, we only have not quite 5.8. So we are approximately 4,000 below that target.
But the total shortfall is a much higher number.
Because we still have 2 months to go.
Be 500 something.
Well, no, it would be over $1 million.
It'd be 1.4 million,
1.4 million, exactly.
but we still have 2 months of revenue to go. And so we know that we will make some of that. But if the fiscal year had ended after 10 months and we had a 10-month budget, then we're trying to.
Yeah,
reach
it's
some
just, to
guidelines.
me, it's just kind of a little deceptive because, I see that number, it's smaller. When I look at the overall budget and what was adopted and with the revenue shortfall, it's over $1 million.
Correct. Because
And
we
that's-
haven't finished the year.
Commissioner Sterling?
I just want to make a comment, since we're on public record, and I'll use the word Keel just used, deceptive, that I find it inappropriate, almost immoral to bill the ratepayers at a rate higher than what they're having to pay after May 1st.
We're gonna get to that discussion. I
Okay.
already stated that. It's on the
I just wanted to
agenda.
make sure that it's
Okay,
on
you'll have a
public
chance.
record.
You'll have a chance. Okay.
And one.
Yeah, Commissioner Holloway.
In looking at the actual cash flow, it looks like we are down somewhere between 80 and 100,000 from what we billed in a billing cycle, 5-monthly billing cycle. And I know that there are adjustments that we are not given any information about. That's my understanding in any case. So my concern, which isn't your doing by any stretch of the imagination, is that we are, that these numbers do not include those adjustments, some of which are pretty significant. And so the concern for the district is that, as Commissioner Kehoe pointed out, we're going to have a shortfall, and we may have a bigger shortfall than our billing numbers would represent. So can you give us some kind of a feel for not the refunds, because those turn up in the bill, well, refunds turn up in the accounts payable, and those amounts then have to be deducted from these revenue amounts that we get from you. But I'm sure there are journal entry adjustments and offsets and things that do not appear in the form of a check being cut for a refund. So I'm trying to get a handle on.
That you're referring to like leak adjustments?
Well, leak adjustments, or somebody calls you and says, no, my bill was wrong. You know, it should be $20, not $30.
And it's determined that that's correct?
Yeah, and then you simply reduce it internally.
And I do not have a bill for that.
Okay. But that's one of the things we're certainly gonna be looking for and looking at, because as we start dealing with the bond covenant ratios, that actually is an impact that I'm not sure we are in fact even calculating.
No, we have calculated it. We calculated it for the budget committee when those were discussed. I did talk to Carol before she left, and what she indicated to me that those are the very things that she intended to talk about next Thursday when we got together, because that's really part of the whole budget adoption process, is making sure that the board understands what those adjustments are and how she's going to treat that.
So we'll have a handle on, at least to date, what those adjustments are and how they're impacting revenue. My concern, of course, all the way through the budget process, was that I expect that we have budgeted for too much revenue. And without having all the information, you know, even in the current year, we don't have a clue.
Well, and I think that in my conversations with them, when I was talking with her, if the board has specific questions that they would like to address, I know that some of the questions you're asking are those that she's prepared to address. But if there's additional things that you'd like for her to address, for staff to address, if we know what those are, we can certainly address them next Thursday when we have a meeting.
Well, I believe that Commissioner Kehoe is planning on asking for a work session so that the board can define what it really wants by way of financial information, so we don't have these kinds of questions at the end of the year next year facing us. We'll have a much clearer picture all the way along where we actually are.
Thank you.
I was going to bring up down the personnel services, that, as you can see, we are above where we were a year ago as far as year over year. The majority of this is really due to CIP projects. When we did the budget for fiscal year 12, we had anticipated using a lot more staff time, operations, and a lot of resources to help with some capital projects. You know, has not turned out to be as much time as we thought it would be. So more of your time is being charged to the general fund to do their regular work. And as a result, we are going high. So we believe that we will need a resolution transfer to ensure that we do not go over budget. So even though the general fund is higher, CIP is not spending as much for expenditures in CIP for personnel services.
Well, the budget, Karen, shows that we appropriated 0 for CIP personal services last year.
Questions raised to Department of Revenue that you pointed out to them. They came back to us and said you should not be appropriating at the personnel services level and the materials and services level. Capital projects are capital outlay, and that is our appropriation, is at the capital outlay. So capital outlay in this case is made up of personnel services, salaries, as well as contract work, engineering, and other items of that nature.
No,
Which
contract work is gonna be under materials and services.
Not in the CIP fund.
Well, we only appropriated last year capital outlay.
That is
And
correct.
in the CIP fund, and what I am confused about from your statement is this shift is being made in the general fund.
Correct.
So, since you didn't have any,
Category of personal services, but we are still using staff time in the CIP fund. But for budget purposes, it has to be categorized as capital outlay, because
But-
it becomes an asset of the company.
okay, but here's my question. This is what doesn't make sense to me. Then our personal services number in the general fund should have been high enough to accommodate whatever we anticipated spending included in capital outlay, right?
No,
No.
because we do allocate staff time that is spent doing capital projects in the CIP fund. We do allocate their time to the CIP fund. And we had anticipated that when we did the budget last year for fiscal year 12.
So what you're saying then is that we didn't, excuse me, let me just finish this track. So we did not use that staff time in CIP. Otherwise, you'd be making a transfer within the CIP fund from capital outlay to personal services. Is that correct?
The first half of your statement is correct. We would not be doing a transfer within the CIP fund because all work in the CIP fund is considered capital outlay.
So let me be sure I understand this, because this is brand new information. So in terms of capital outlay, we do not have any personnel charges or materials and services charges ever?
It is not in the category for budgeting purposes of that. It
Okay.
is-
Okay,
Even
now,
though we
I
have
understand
staff
that.
time.
But the last 2 years, we have moved money around within the CIP fund to accommodate for personal services.
That is
Now,
correct.
So this is what I'm trying to understand. I'm not deliberately being dense, I don't understand it.
It's new.
Um,
It's different.
So all of the personal services is in the general fund. There is none in the CIP fund, is that correct?
It's
At the end of the year.
at the end of the year, there is personal services in the general fund. There is also staff time in the CIP fund. The ruling from Department of Revenue, when we had them review our budget last year, was all expenditures within the CIP fund should be in the category of capital outlay. Even though in the past, we could call it personal services and materials and services.
So here's what I'm not clear on. If all you put into capital outlay was capital outlay, and you knew that you wouldn't be putting any personnel services, or personal if they were at the time, in capital improvements, all of the personal services would have been under the general fund, correct?
It is not.
It is not.
I guess it's kind of hard to track where the personal service charges are coming from by separating it out of CIP, because it's now in capital outlay.
This was as a direct result of the appeal to the Department of Revenue.
No,
That's fine.
I
Page
I guess what I'm getting ready to say
Yeah.
is that how you budget for the dollars and how you account for the dollars are separate.
exactly, but I guess it's hard for the board to keep track of it and what the breakdown is of.
Which is why we hadn't done it that way before.
I understand that. I'm not coming down on staff
No,
at
no,
all
I'm
or the
not.
process. What I'm saying is, I as a board member would like to be able to track it and figure out the difference of personnel services, separating it from the general fund out of CIP.
Now, on
It's-
page 5 of the same report, even though it's labeled capital outlay, we have 2 line items. We do tell you how
On
much.
page 5 on your presentation.
The same report that
Okay.
we were looking
Well, I
at.
didn't understand about your presentation, or, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is the capital improvement projects fund. So it's also kind of detailed some information, a little more detailed than what the just higher level. So the expenditures, which are capital outlay expenditures, has 2 categories underneath. Personnel services, so we can know, so we can give you some information how much salaries are being spent for capital projects. And also the materials and services. Those were the categories you were used to seeing in the past. But now we have to label them capital outlay, but I'm still telling you how many salary dollars are here. And we're still telling you how much is materials and services, so the contract labor, the engineering services.
Okay,
See, now, this is what I don't get, because on your presentation, you said that we're over, under personnel services.
We're getting general fund.
No, you said that it was due to capital improvement projects.
Because we're not charging as much labor. Right now, we're about 50% of our labor compared to what we anticipated for the year
For capital improvement
for
projects.
capital improvement projects, rather than the 80%.
Yeah, but you said that the difference between last fiscal year to this fiscal year was due to an increase in personnel services and capital improvement projects.
Not doing the capital improvement projects. We're spending more time on the general fund, doing our regular.
Because that, I'm sorry, that wasn't what I heard, which was where the.
That's what I was supposed to be saying.
Okay.
Was trying to say that we're spending less time doing capital projects for the departments of water resources and operations. They're not helping out on capital projects due to the nature of the projects. And we thought that they would spend more time. They're spending less time doing capital projects and more time doing regular.
Okay, but if I may, here's what does not make sense. The budget appropriation for capital outlay was 2.959 million. And in this sheet that you've given us here, which is page 5 of 5, you're showing expenditures under CIP as, to this point in time, 185,402 for personal services, 777,373 for material services. Now, based on what I understood each of you to say, this really isn't personal services or material services. It is capital outlay. Is that correct?
For the purpose of the budget.
Of the budget.
Okay, for the purpose of the budget. Okay, so now, my question is, why would you not, since you knew you can't include material services and personal services in the budgeting process, why would you not have included those? Well, let me back a little bit.
Well, excuse
No,
me.
wait,
for-
just, no, but,
Well,
wait, hang on.
Commissioner Holloway, excuse me for interrupting, and you can slander me or whatever you want to. I think, though, that Ms. Seid is not the appropriate person to be asking these questions. I think we need to wait until Ms. Bright is returned, and that way then we have the chief cook and bottle washer, or whatever you want to refer to it, answering the questions. She's gracious enough to substitute here, the sun's going to come up shortly, to try to give us some information. But I think we really should conclude this at this time and let it
All right,
be picked up when Carol Bright comes. Please.
I am agreeable to waiting until Ms. Bright is back, but I have some real questions about this process, because how in heaven's name are we to align any of this information with our budget when they are totally
Well,
disconsolate.
Ms. Keyholt has questions
Yeah.
also too. I
Yeah,
mean,
They're not, it's just, she explained it to me, and it was sufficient, which is, there's a process for the budget adoption, and then they outline it in the financial summaries that we received, the financial updates, but it's in the budget as to how it's separated, even though it's not by line item. It's on here under summary of the fund's adopted budget, so I get it.
And we used to do it the other way, as you're suggesting.
Yes.
We were told, as a result of the discussion last year, to then, remember, and that was in
Yes.
June when we heard about that, to go back and account for it the other way. So
I get it.
we're kind of between the.
I didn't tell you, Mr. Moore.
I know,
Well,
no,
sorry.
I know the Department of Revenue, when we were having that, I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just saying
Well.
that.
My,
So,
I'm
my
sorry,
question's
my
still
question,
outstanding.
really, I just wanted to know why there was an increase in personnel services from last year, and from your explanation, I thought you said it was due to an increase in CIP personnel services, but that was not the case.
It was the
So I
reverse.
was, yeah, so I was just wondering where the increase was coming from.
And the other thing is that we reshuffle some projects to pull the generator project forward, which also changed how we would account for labor as a result of
Yeah,
doing
but
it. And we told the board that last year.
But the bottom line is, we have paid more in salary this year, which could never have appeared in CIP,
It's not about what you're,
than we anticipated.
well, that's not totally correct.
Well,
In
next
terms
week
of
you'll get a
how
chance to
we're
explain to me why.
accounting for it, and I just suggest that Mr. Sterling's comment is appropriate. If we want to put a work session with more time on the front of the next
Yeah.
week's meeting, I suggest that we do that, because I do think it's important that everybody understands.
Right, because, you know, 30-plus years doing a spreadsheet as a private business owner, these numbers don't look good.
Well, and I had to.
To quote Mr. Fuller from,
Precision.
Precision
Yeah.
Investments.
if this were a private business, it would not be in business.
Well, and what I
And
had.
that's
to-
his quote.
Yeah, and what I had to learn is that how you account in a public utilities is different than how, when you do capital construction in other agencies.
Thank you, Gary.
Madam Chair, I do have to say just very quickly that I think this has been a very good illustration and a distinction of what has happened in the past. This has been a very good discussion, and I want to compliment the board. It is not based upon allegation, it is simply questions that have been asked of staff and answered, and I think if the board would use this as a model and an approach, we would get much farther along. And I want to compliment particularly Commissioner Holloway and Commissioner Sterling that regardless of your views, this was a very appropriate dialogue and questions that you had about the budget. And so if you can use this as a model, I think we would all get along much better and get your questions answered rather than basing it on allegations. So
Well,
thank you.
Mr. Phillips, I would comment, though, that it is a two-way street. In this particular situation, Ms. Syke turned herself inside out trying to answer our questions. Where things become contentious is where we ask for what I consider to be reasonable information and can't get it. And relative to the budget process, for example, although budget law is very clear that individual gross salary is to be provided upon request, with the exemption that
Okay, we're gonna
people
have,
like.
we're gonna
No, no, no.
have the
Thank you,
budget.
Mike. Thank you very
We're
much,
gonna
Mr.
have-
Phillips,
No, no,
for your
but
comment.
Tammy, no,
We're
this
gonna
is
have the
it.
budget
Commissioner Holloway.
discussion next week.
Wait, please. This
Let's
is,
move
no,
on,
this is
please.
important, this is
Let's
important,
move on.
because it
Can we
is,
move on?
Yes,
it
no,
is
we're- no, we need a-
a two-way street.
Noted. We're
We-
moving on.
Everyone knows that.
And I do have a
Some
couple of
people
questions
can't
about
take,
account payable.
yeah.
Well, no two people are alike. I mean, thank you, Mr. Phillips, we're moving on.
Some people
Oh, excuse me.
don't like
Do you want to move on?
compliments.
Ready for a question?
I do have some questions on
No.
accounts payable.
During the month of
Issue
May,
the building.
we did have 2 payrolls for a grand total of $198,027.11. And we also had accounts payable paid for the month of May in the amount of $422,077.60. We did want to make sure there was a note that one of our vendors changed their names. So and I believe that's reflected in the check register for this month. So it's not a new vendor, it's just our vendor that's in place, so we will now be known as. So if I could ask for a motion to acknowledge our payroll as well as our accounts payable.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move to acknowledge payroll in the gross amount of $198,027.11. Acknowledge net accounts paid in the amount of $422,077.60 for the month of May 2012.
Seconded.
Thank you. Discussion? Dora, can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Cardwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Holloway,
No.
Commissioner Kemper,
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling,
No,
and Commissioner Kudlow.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you, Karen.
Okay, rate increase.
The fun thing we've all been waiting for.
Madam Chair, I do have the language from the March resolution. I can read it to you for the record. The final whereas on the first page of the resolution states, and I quote, "Whereas the increase will apply to the bi-monthly service charges, volume and fire service charges for direct service, paren retail customers, close paren, effective on or after May 1, and be reflected in utility bills mailed in June."
So it can be applied for the April billing.
No.
It's just
It's
unethical.
pretty
Just
explicit.
unethical.
There's two issues
It
that have been
doesn't say
raised.
it.
One, is it illegal, and the second one, is it inappropriate? Obviously, that's the issue. I don't believe that there's been a legal opinion that says that you cannot bill for a service as long as you provide notice to, let me rephrase that. I don't think that there is a legal opinion or a court decision that says that you cannot bill for service that has been rendered before the bill comes out, and that's the issue.
Yeah, but the language of the resolutions talks about service delivered after May 1.
It says service charges.
No, read it again, please.
The increase will apply to the bi-monthly service charges. Bi-monthly service charges. Volume and fire service charges for direct service effective on or after May 1.
Okay.
After,
That's what, then, okay, it's
Okay.
after May 1.
so then it's after
On
May
or
1st.
after May 1.
Yeah, which is,
Yeah, but
Not
it's the
before May 1,
it's-
on or after.
Well, you can read that both ways. Now, I don't know what notice went out to the customers. This is just only the resolution. But the resolution does talk about the bi-monthly service charges that are included in the June billing. It goes on to say, and be reflected in utility bills mailed in June. So those are the bi-monthly charges. It tells them that it will be effective as of May 1. So the billing, and that's where staff was getting the language, the billing is occurring after May 1. The question is, to what charges does it, to what service charges does it apply, to the April, May, or both?
and
So
when was
That's a
that,
decision for the board.
when was the resolution approved?
The resolution was approved at the March 29th meeting, special meeting.
Okay, so that was before April.
Before.
But
There
it
was
was approved
notice.
effective May 1.
Well, that's because we bill bi-monthly, so,
No, if that had, if that was the intent, it would have said effective April 1, not May 1.
Well, it says for bills on or after May 1.
That's.
Well, it says for service.
That's
on
a
Service
reasonable-
charges,
that's
it
a
says
reasonable
bi-monthly service
interpretation.
charges for bills on or after May 1st.
I still think that I don't think it's correct, and I think it's inappropriate to make it retroactive.
That's obviously a
And,
board
and,
decision.
and that was the position the board took, back in 2008.
If you have to consider our customers, you have to consider the ratepayers at CRW. They're not attorneys. Most of them aren't college graduates with expertise in ethics or morals or anything like that. They see, hey, May 1st, I'm going to get a rate increase. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, it's April 17th and I'm having to pay May 1st rate increases, and it's April 17th. There's such a thing as reasonable ethical behavior upon people that are elected to represent constituents.
Commissioner Cooper?
There was notification of this before that water was used, because we approved the rate increase before the water would have been used, correct? The resolution was
in
dated.
March. It said March 20.
In March.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, the resolution.
Because the
it's a question.
resolution was approved in March, I don't know.
And it applies to water from April and May essentially.
Well, that's based on the interpretation,
Yeah.
and the board can apply whatever interpretation they want.
But as opposed to the rate increase in June of 2007, I think it was wasn't that pretty much effective immediately?
No, Karen knows when we sent out that notice.
The issue came from the May or June
Yeah.
2007 rate adjustment. That's where we equalized the north and the south.
Yeah.
And that particular one, we took a vote. That's when we did the adjustment for.
I'm not talking about that.
But that's the one we did the adjustment for. The vote was taken late in the month. We had already read the meters. Therefore, the approval of that adjustment came after some of the water had been used.
So that's the difference. with
That's
this
the
situation.
That's the difference.
And
There was no
in
notice it had been
June
used.
or July of 2008, when we did the next rate increase, we did vote, we had the hearing, we did vote, and then after that, we implemented it. So we made sure that we had a meter reading, and then after that, we would have billed, so that they would have time to make the adjustment. So they knew about the rate increase, they got an outer bill, then the rate increase became effective. That is what we did this time.
That's sufficient for me. Now I
Me too.
understand. Thank you.
I still believe that we should have, if that was the intent, it should have been made effective April 1, which indeed it could have been, and it was not. And then the other issue is, of course, the 42.75% instead of the 14.25%.
And you keep
That was
saying
clearly
42,
stated
but
in the
14 is what the overall increase was. It just, you didn't pay attention enough to at where it was being weighted.
Mike, I'd appreciate it if you
Well, you
could tell
said
me what I
yourself
paid
that you
attention
didn't
to
pay
or not.
attention.
No, what I didn't do was the math to find out that it was a 42.75%, because we had instructed a 14.25% increase.
Overall.
And,
Overall.
Mike, none of us,
Okay.
no, this is important,
Pat,
because
it was clear in the paperwork. I saw the form.
That wasn't on the
It was
We
agenda.
have-
The agenda had the effective date and billing of resolution. The resolution's been passed, that discussion took place, we're moving forward, it's
okay,
10
wait,
o'clock.
just one
Okay.
second.
So,
We,
no.
Cammie, this is important, and I'm going to say it. We have never been given the information that corroborates that the end result is 14.25%. We do not have that information. I have requested it multiple times. It has never been provided. And to go to Mr. Phillips' point, things get contentious when reasonable information is not
So
provided
what are you-
upon
what-
which to understand an issue.
What are
But
you
you had
looking
initially,
for?
Pat, it stated clearly that the overall rate increase is gonna be the 14.25. I mean, how many times have you
Mike.
given the same information?
We don't have anything to corroborate that, nothing.
So what are you
Take your
looking
bill,
Nothing.
Pat.
And,
What are you
and Ms.
looking for?
Bright instructed the rate consultants to load it into the base rate, and that was not the instruction from the board. It simply was not.
It was in the paperwork we were given.
Okay,
And the
so
paperwork was in front of us,
so
and we
what-
could have
it's
seen.
right
Oh,
there.
yes, it was,
Okay,
Pat.
what I can do is there's another agenda coming up.
It's your choice, you guys.
If
You have the
we
three
have
minutes.
another agenda coming up, you know the process. If you'd like to see something on the agenda, request that it be placed, but we're moving forward.
It's
I
too late
think,
now.
is staff gone to do the curb?
Adam?
Oh, there's Adam. I was like, we're thinking, wow.
But I do have a couple of quick questions on accounts payable, please.
No, we're moving forward.
Okay, then
You're gonna have to
Tammy,
wait.
then,
You're gonna
no.
have to wait till next.
can address
Okay,
it
then you must give me time on the coming agenda to address it, because what you've done in the past is say, no, too late, you snooze, you
Well, it is
lose.
too late for this meeting.
It is
Bob,
not,
you
we're
are-
still in the financial report.
No, we're not.
Well, we only are not because you are refusing to allow me to ask.
Adam is
questions.
on.
All right.
Bob,
Your choice.
Oh. Bob is on.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, it says Adam, or no, Bob, oh, I don't know, Bob, okay.
agenda item number 5,
Thank you.
update for the Carter Bridge project. I want to bring to your attention that because of our CRW staff and actual construction schedules out of Carver on the bridge and ODOT on paving, we have postponed the phase 1 work, which consists of about 165 feet of 12-inch water line to tie in at Highway 224 and Greenwater Road. And that was originally budgeted for about $78,000. And I'm just bringing to your attention that the intent is still to build this. It's an important part of the interconnection between the north and south side for the east end of the district. And my intent is to bring this back to the board in an appropriate time in the future. And there's several ways that we can bid it at that time. Build, just like we would have done anyway. We can have Waterloo do it for a change order. Waterloo is our contractor for the phase 2 work. He will be doing the bridge work and our water line work. We can negotiate with him to do the work, the extra 165 feet. Or a third option would be wait until we do the third Hatton Road phase, which would be the south side where we tie the bridge to Hatton Road.
Thank you.
So really, it's just notification of a postponement of this one phase.
I just have one quick question.
Yes,
Under status, you say, the construction of this project's been postponed due to CRW staff and construction schedule.
yep.
Does that mean that it was delayed because our staff was not able to get to it? It sounds like it was only delayed because the county delayed
No, it was several things. Certain decisions were made on the paving of the ODOT highway out there that was causing some heartache on saw cutting the pavement, and they had a schedule such that we weren't able to get in front of them. We also have our staff working on the JPA, which I'm working on, the NCRA, and then Mr. Bjornstead is working on, of course, the emergency generator. We did finish the design, we have it all ready to go, so when it is time to bid or build it, we have the documents ready to go. We ran out of time.
it. Well, I'm still not clear if the county delayed, this is what I'm confused on. So are you saying that we're not prepared to move ahead for another year or so because we do not have staff to perform the work?
Because of priorities, I postponed the work later in the year. Get right down to it. I made a decision earlier in this fiscal year not to do the work earlier in the fiscal year. With that decision, because of priorities of other work, it put me in a position where I didn't have time to get it bid and built before the end of this fiscal year, which causes heartache in the budget cycle. I chose not to budget it in the 12-13 year. You won't see it in the budget. I ran out of time with other work that we were doing. So the construction project, I postponed
So.
I won't blame it on the county, it's a combination of several things. I even made a decision, sitting there watching this postponement of the bridge. I wasn't convinced until 5 months ago that the bridge was actually gonna get built. Now, that's my interpretation, my communication with the county, and watching these delays and schedules that were happening. The county finally made that decision, they pulled the trigger, they're building out there. I don't know if you've been out there. So it's a combination of my decisions as the district engineer on prioritizing our CIP projects. I ran out of time.
So did you communicate that to Mr. Moore?
Yes,
Mr. Moore, you didn't communicate that to us.
that's what this is
That's
for.
what this is,
That is-
Oh, no,
this is really-
the decision was made months ago, obviously.
Not months, about a month ago. I was ready, in fact, we even had letters out to contractors to bid this, and I ran out of time with our workload to get this bid.
Okay, but you said a number of months ago, you made the decision not to make this a priority.
No, he didn't say that.
That's.
I
He didn't say not to make it a priority. What we said to the board at the last time, when you asked us to move the emergency generator forward, we told you that some of the other projects that we had that involved planning were gonna get pushed back in order to speed up the emergency generator. The other thing that has happened is that Mr. George has been very busy on the Sunrise Corridor work. He explained to the board that he had a lot of stuff. He also explained that when that work would come around and how it would be sliced and diced, he couldn't predict that. And he said to the board, expect some changes as we get into this cycle.
Okay,
We had a finite window of time to hit, and we missed it.
Well, it's not that we did, there was a cumulative effect that happened,
Well,
okay?
and all
No.
I'm saying is if this was within the last month, fine. If this was a decision that was made a number of months ago, I would have wanted to know about it at that time.
You would have known at that time.
That's all I'm saying.
You would have known, but the
But
final
that didn't
decision to
happen.
pull the project was approximately.
So
No,
it didn't
that's
happen.
why
Let's move on.
I just.
Bob, I have a question for you.
I don't
And I
That's
do
an
have
answer.
solutions to make this project happen. We have 3 opportunities in the future to still make this happen.
I have a question for you. When it says Highway 224 south along Springwater Road,
Yes,
I thought Springwater Road was east of the river.
Springwater Road is on the south side of the river.
Or,
The Springwater Road comes across the bridge.
South side.
224 is on the north side.
It runs
yeah,
east to
Spring,
west.
is that Springwater that goes over the bridge? Because I
Yes.
thought that road just goes along the river. What
Both
road
of them. Springwater goes across the river and follows the south side of Clackamas. Going on the north side,
Yeah, that I understand. I didn't realize it crossed the bridge. I just thought it was on the one side of the river.
I believe the
Springwater.
bridge is Springwater Road.
Okay, that's all. I just had a question.
And the phase 2 is on schedule.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not losing any time on this by.
Well, we are. He just.
Well, it's not costing us more money,
Correct.
that's the
I'm
important thing.
postponing
They're still not
construction.
building the
The
bridge.
funds will go back to
Yeah.
CIP. We will
Well, that-
reschedule the
Okay,
work.
so then the question is, how much does this delay us in getting that connection put in place?
A year or 2,
A year?
maybe 3. Keep in mind, I don't need the connection until the bridge is all done.
The bridge is in there.
And the half road portion is done.
Right, well, that, and
So I
that's,
have a good 2 to 4 year period here as all these work on to get this 165
well,
feet done.
that was really my question. So it doesn't delay what we are ultimately going to do with it, at least
It
at
does
this
not.
stage. That's all I wanted to know.
It does not.
Thank you, that's what I wanted to know.
Is Wildish your contractor that the state is using on any of the other projects on 21224 or not?
I don't know. I see them around, I just know they're working on the Carver Bridge one.
Hey, Bob, I have another question for you. In regards to the Sunrise Corridor Highway, or the
Yes.
Sunrise Highway, I thought someone told me that it was not on the county's TSP, the most recent one.
It's not the county road, it's an ODOT project.
Yeah,
Or
the state
ODOT, I'm
highway.
sorry, that it wasn't on ODOT's most recent TSP. Do you know anything about that, or have you
Nope.
heard anything?
All I know is that I'm filling out the forms, they're looking at the dollars, they're giving me a letter of notice to proceed to design and how much they're going to pay for reimbursement.
Okay,
I'm working through their contractor, ODOT.
That's right,
Okay.
yeah, because they're already there on staff and up and going.
okay,
As far as I know, the funding's still there.
Good.
all right.
How much many feet is it from the bridge to the Sunrise connection around the corner by the grocery store? That there's no pipe there?
There's no pipe all the way from the little store, or the hangar, the restaurant.
Yeah.
All the way down Springwater to the bridge, there is no pipe in there right now. It's about 600 feet long total
Less than 1,000 feet?
to the bridge.
Yeah. Okay, but that would hook it to Sunrise then, wouldn't it? It's possible,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, the idea is to hook the Sunrise at the corner there, on 224 and Springwater Road.
What's the diameter of the pipe?
12-inch coming off of Sunrise, going across the bridge is 18.
So you would take and put an 18 eventually if we were to cover that space going back to the Sunrise.
The first couple hundred feet will be 12-inch.
Mhm.
Then we go to 18 across the bridge, and then we'll convert down to 12 again.
Okay. Thank you for answering that, appreciate it.
All right, Adam. Thank you, Bob.
This is agenda item number 6. Generator project. Updated unknown action item of the mission.
Funny, David.
And Adam, most of this document is still applicable to the research and the engineering? It still flies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course with design advancing in the contracting or design phase that we're in now, that does get updated as information is gathered. But, yeah, most of the findings in the appendix report are still applicable. So my intent tonight is to give an update, a brief update on the project, and then request the early work amendment. So I guess I'll just throw out there that at one point in the presentation, there'll be the need to convene the contract review board, Mr. Phillips, is that correct? I didn't want to lose that in the noise, but I did want to present the update as well. So if that is approved by the board, we can go that out. Just a quick outline of what we'll talk about here. I wanted to discuss the recent design activity, review of the project design scope, some of the elements, PGE's work that has come to light or will be coming to fruition in the near future. We've been looking at existing equipment a little more, again, with the focus on the deficiencies there with our old electrical equipment at the plant and how we can improve those from functional and safety standpoints. And then looking at the generator facility, of course, how that ties into everything. And then we'll go into this early work amendment, which in essence is a change order on the existing CMGC contract, the need for that at this point in time, and justification for what I would say. So, just a quick recap. In December, the board approved the CMGC, or construction manager, general contractor, contract with Oregon Electric Construction. They've been providing pre-construction phase services or design phase for the last several months. A number of tasks that we've been coordinating with them on in design. There's been a number of site visits that they've conducted to gather information, looking at, again, our existing treatment plant, electrical components, and pre-submittal work with, well, really their vendors or proposed vendors, and PGE has been involved at certain levels as well. Just a quick snippet on PGE's activity. Just recently, last month, we received a service line extension request and agreement request from them. And if you recall, that component of the project really, it comes out of the conduct report as well, was to update our electrical service into the treatment plant compound itself. So from the street or from the grid, in essence, changing from a primary metering system to a secondary metering system where PGE would update and maintain, be responsible for more of what's coming in. So as part of that request, there's new power distribution coming into the plant. That also includes the transformer, which it will be sized appropriately for the generator project. And I just want to bring that up because hopefully my intent is next board meeting, the July regular board meeting on the 12th, we'll be bringing that to the board for approval for PG to begin that work. It's concurrent with the project, but it can run separately because it is a wholly PG function. There will just be basically a payment that they'll ask CRW to make prior to their work starting, and then a small agreement that we'll bring to the board associated with that for approval.
And it'll be placed on our property, or will it be on their right of way?
It will be on our property.
Okay.
Other design work, and really the main project design, we're focusing on critical electrical upgrades and again, replacing obsolete and outdated equipment. I just included a couple of pictures to kind of give you an idea. Most of the motor control centers which is basically the control systems that run and control the main pumps, both the high-lift pumps at the treatment plant, which feed water out from the plant into the distribution system, and also the low-lift pumps are at the intake, which bring water from the river up to the treatment plant. A number of those controls are in need of help, of really replacement. And again, the logic behind that, big emphasis on safety, looking at arc flash, minimizing the hazards that come with medium voltage equipment and staff operating or working around that equipment, making those sorts of improvements. And we're also considering and communicating with the contractor what are our future needs. You know, as we look at 10 to 15 or 20-year window on the existing treatment plant, what may be needs in the sense of alternate treatment that may come down the line if we're required to do something like ozone or ultraviolet UV to meet upcoming regulations from EPA. Those are things that we consider in a project like this, so that we can build in some factor of safety for what we're designing in the way of power requirements now, so we don't have to upgrade later to meet future needs. And just a couple photos. These were taken from an inventory we did recently. This is just a shot of a couple of the panels at the high-lift pump station, so right in the plant itself. These are two motor control panels for pumps 1 and 2, high-lift pumps 1 and 2. And in this case, this is one that we're proposing and working with the contractor that will probably be combined into one panel system, which will add some safety features and save some space. This photo here is, to the right, is from the low-lift pump station for the intake down the hill. This one actually is probably the newer of the two. This is the Motor Control Center West, which operates a couple of the pumps you can see by the lake. It's pumps 1 and 4. And then if I can jump to the next one, this is Motor Control East, and you can just, to my eye, I guess, maybe living and breathing it, this one sure looks older to me, and it is. The controls are either obsolete or can't get replacement parts from them, or a couple of these bays or cans aren't even in use. Just a number of things like that. Our reason for inventorying this equipment is really to capture the functional requirements, the things that the plant staff use to operate the system now. We don't want to lose that when we do these upgrades. So these are things that we'll be communicating to the contractor. There's certain elements, certain control devices that we'll ask the contractor to work into their design, so that when they put in the new equipment, it captures that and we don't lose that functionality. The generator gear, this is kind of getting more into the proposed equipment realm. Really, the generator switch gear is kind of a big piece of pie, so to speak. If you recall the schematics and the examples that we've shown, there's a generator building itself, what's enclosing the generator, and then there's a separate switch gear, which houses a separate structure which houses the parallel switch gear that controls not only the generator and feeds power to the treatment plant, but also the parallel side is a PGE component that when an instance arises, PGE feeds power back up to the grid through the DSG program, the dispatchable power program. So,
Adam, can I ask you just a quick question?
Sure.
You mentioned the inventory. Is that this property exam court facilities condition assessment report?
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Oh, that, it's a
Sorry.
$6,800 item?
No, the inventory I'm mentioning is just internal staff conducting inventory of the equipment that I showed you.
Okay.
Really informal. Yeah, there's not a contract associated. Although this is information that we're, in a sense, assisting with conduct engineer, our electrical engineer on the generator project, helping the contractor get this information. The switchgear, one key element, and working into kind of the reason that I'm up here with this change order request, is that the switchgear itself is a very long lead item, quick piece of equipment. It's long lead because it's custom. It's really built to the specifics of given project and facility. And Caterpillar, since it's a Caterpillar generator that we own, they would likely be furnishing the switchgear for this project. As indicated, and this was communicated early on, that it's about 20-week turnaround from the time we approve a specific design and equipment to them, finalizing shop drawings, sending them back to us. We approve, PGE approves, goes back, fabrication starts, and then finally shipped out to the site. So to hold our place in line with the manufacturer, this is kind of giving rise to the contractor has requested a contract modification to allow some initial work to get done in this design phase. Yes.
Adam, will the switchgear be located outside like it is at NCWC, or is it
It'll be a little different than what you see at NCCW. It'll be different than what you see at NCCWC. The gear itself will be similar, but the enclosure will be.
There will be an enclosure.
There will be an enclosure. It will be a higher quality enclosure. It will be a walk-in type.
They don't have an enclosure at all over theirs.
It is considered an enclosure, although when you open it up, it's not a walk-in space.
Okay.
You open the doors essentially, and you're standing in the rain working on your electrical
Gotcha.
equipment. So, from a safety perspective, and just we didn't want to.
Just put a roof over it.
We wanted to create a walk-in space that was more user-friendly, more safe. So.
Thank you.
So anyway, getting to the early work amendment, again, this is just a change order to the existing CMGC contract. It's a modification that's justified in the contract itself. I just referenced a couple of the articles there. And again, the justification to do this is to meet our proposed schedule with this long lead time equipment. The contractor is recommending or requesting that we show, in essence, a commitment to allow them to release approved designs to their manufacturers to kind of get in that queue. It's possible that if we miss, a window because of the lead time issues, that passes and you lose a couple months in the process. So, with the manufacturers, the early work amendment adds just shy of $41,000 to the existing design contract with the CMGC. And again, I don't want to repeat or belabor what I just said, but with the approval, the contractor can then release our approved, the equipment designs that we've approved to their manufacturer for further development in that design process. Allows the manufacturer to begin that work, and again, it helps achieve our scheduling goals for the overall project. There is the option, and sometimes it's done this way if schedule isn't quite as much of an issue, to wait until after your guaranteed maximum price negotiation in this type of project, or in essence, wait until your construction phase to release these submittals for final design and fabrication. In essence, we are looking to do that further up front in the schedule to capture that time and save in scheduling. One thing I wanted to note was that the amendment does not add to the overall project budget. This is work that would, again, normally be done under the construction phase. We're just moving it ahead in the process to capture those time savings. And I mentioned the other option, wait until after guaranteed maximum price negotiation, which would likely convert to missing some of the 2012 construction window.
I just have, sorry.
Dean, prior to the motion being made, do we have to convene a local contractor review?
That's the
Preferred.
That's what I thought, okay.
Adam, I just have one question. Is all of the design work and everything that's required in place to go ahead and order this stuff? We're not gonna order it and then find out in a couple of months that we really need something else. That's my question.
Correct. Yeah, if I can answer, let me know if this is not answering the question. Actually, I'm gonna jump to the actual agenda item.
Mhm.
If you grab that, the exhibit A, I should have said this earlier, it's the draft early work amendment. If you look, scroll through that, if you could, to page 4, shows a breakdown from the contractor for what the 41,000 of the 40,688 is composed of. In essence, it's a percentage of some estimates that the contractor has placed on specific equipment items. Key in there is number 3, switchgear, generator housing, fuel tank drawings. That's basically a piece of what the manufacturer would spend to further the design from a manufacturer standpoint, so we can do a final approval and then start the fabrication. Is that?
Well, no, I was just, we're set, we know exactly what we need. When we order, we're ordering the right thing.
We will,
And we're not,
yes. Correct.
change
Yeah.
our minds later. Okay.
Yeah, that's one thing that we have emphasized with the contractor. They're, like many contractors, want to hit the ground running and get out there and start building. We're saying, hold up, we need to, yes, schedule is of the essence, however, we need to approve these things before we just approve something or let you go out and conduct this work. So especially with the PGE component as well, there's an approval piece there.
And the procurement request total is 40,000, is 18% of the 215, is that correct?
Yes.
So this is basically earnest money? Kind of, we're making a down payment?
It's a down payment.
And when do we need to finish paying for it, when we get it?
It'll be more of an upfront payment.
Well, my question is, when do
Oh,
we
the
have to
total
pay?
payment?
the
Yeah.
total amount?
Yes, it would be, likely it would come out of the construction phase. Unless there's another amendment where somehow we justify additional payment.
And we've budgeted for that in this fiscal year?
Yes,
Great.
yes.
Thanks.
The actual product that we're purchasing from Oregon Electric, they'll retain it until it's at the point of installation? Or they're not going to bring it out here and put it in our op building or something like that, right?
That'll depend on what it is and how much time is between delivery and proposed installation. We do have terms in the draft amendment that states issues surrounding like warranty. In other words, if we
That's what I was getting
deliver
at,
to the
because
site.
we don't want it dropping someplace.
Right.
and-
Yeah.
And they've done that.
Right, we want to make sure the clock starts ticking
Yes.
once the
Good.
thing's installed.
Good. Thank you, Adam.
I have a question for you, Adam. In regards to the original contract and then this amendment, why, was any portion of this in the original contract, or is this an add-on?
It's in addition to what's in
In
the
addition
original contract.
to, I guess my question is why it wasn't in the original, or how this came about? I guess a little bit of.
Sure, yeah, the original contract basically was for the CMGC, the contractor, to provide pre-construction or design phase services. The ordering of equipment was not part of that scope. And really, this is authorizing the initiation or the beginning of ordering of approved equipment. So, up until this point, the 72,000, I think, and change in the original contract is not inclusive of this amount. And the contractor we did not formulate that contract with that in mind, because we didn't know the timeline at that point. But recognizing at this point where we are, and we're allowed to do this under the contract, it was agreed that, or recommended that we proceed in this fashion.
So I guess I'm going to convene the local contract review board, and I should have done it earlier, but I didn't, yeah, but I didn't. Mike?
I move the board approve early work amendment number 1 to the CMGC contract with Oregon Electric Construction Company in the amount of $40,688 and authorize the board president to sign the completed amendment.
Second it.
Effective date June 14, 2012.
Now I'll second it.
Thank you. What is the completed amendment? Is that what's before us? Or
It's
is-
just the final. There's no
Okay.
change to it.
Okay,
That was
that's-
draft in case I had a last minute edit or something. There's no change. Council has
Okay.
reviewed it. and,
So it's
I'll
ready
leave-
to be signed.
It's ready to be signed. I'll leave a copy tonight.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Adora, can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Cardwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Holloway,
Yes.
Commissioner Kemper,
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling,
Yes.
and Commissioner Peacock.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Commissioner reports, and thank you, Adam.
Okay, under Commissioner reports, I have a motion. I move that all Commissioner requests for reimbursement and compensation under CRW Board Policy, Section 1.6, shall be paid upon submission to and approval for accuracy by the CFO.
Could you read that again, Barbara? Or do you have copies of it for us?
You were both copies. I should have cut them.
Oh.
Sorry.
Do you need
That's all
this?
right.
No, I don't need that.
Paper dolls are fine.
Do you need this?
No, I don't need
Oh,
that.
well, there you
I
go.
have
You
this.
or Adam, you can share
And
that.
I'll give a copy of it to Dora. Should I repeat it, or I'm going to give you a written copy of Dora, okay?
I second the motion.
Now,
Oh, wait, do we need to recess the local contract review board? Yes, let's do that first.
Sorry. Adjourning the local contract review board.
Okay.
okay, should I do this again?
Sure.
No, that's okay.
Well,
We
sorry.
should for the record.
Okay, for the record, okay. I have a motion. I move that all Commissioner requests for reimbursement and compensation under CRW Board Policy, Section 1.6, shall be paid upon submission to and approval for accuracy by the CFO.
I second the motion.
Barb, I think from a policy perspective, we would need to suspend, well, I think there are two conditions. We would either need to vote to suspend that section of board policy, or if we want to declare an emergency change to board policy, it requires, I'm looking from memory, unanimous vote.
Okay, my comment here is that I have done a review of the board policy, and there is nothing absolutely at all in our board policy that requires that the board approve Commissioner requests for reimbursement. The approval process has been used inappropriately to deny compensation that's provided to the ORS. There's nothing in our policy to require it. Also, there is nothing in our adopted policies that requires that commissioner reports be presented in writing, though that's been argued in the past to deny compensation. So, according to our policies, commissioner reports can be presented verbally or in writing.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
What is she trying to do?
So-
What
so
are you
if-
trying to do, Kemper?
I'm trying to say we do not have to have board approval of requests, of commissioner requests for reimbursement and compensation.
What-
There's nothing in our policy that requires that.
And you looked at page 7, section 1.8, formulation of policy?
Section
I'm
1.6.
not even
1.6.
talking about changing a policy. There's no change required in our policy. We do not have a policy that requires that the board approve commissioner requests.
So you
Check
want to
out
write
1.6.
policy?
I'm sorry?
She wants to write policy.
No, she's saying that in the future, that the reimbursements are not in the board packet to be voted on by the board for approval, because it's not in our policy. and it's been used as a tool to personally, to go
I
after.
think you could probably just leave that part up in
Well, no,
the
I
spirit
think,
of comedy, Commissioner?
no, I think the reason she's presenting it is because people have not voted to reimburse commissioners, because of personal
To punish them.
feelings. To punish them, exactly. It's being used as a tool to punish people.
We don't, and our policy does not
Please take your
require
own
that we
advice
approve
and
it.
don't go there. Well, look, here's my question. If there's, well, two things. Our form has a requirement that the treasurer sign it. That's number one. If it is correct that there is no obligation, and I'm trying to remember back to what the auditors said about that. I do remember them saying that commissioners should not vote on their own reimbursement. But if there is no policy requirement for it to be approved by the board, we don't need to do anything.
No other board requires approval of commissioner
Yeah, well, I'm-
reimbursements.
yeah,
They're
I'm
just
not-
done
I'm-
through the CFO.
I'm not concerned about.
Sunrise does, when you go to the Sunrise
Oh,
meetings,
no,
they
no.
put forth their agenda.
There's not an item on their agenda.
No,
They do
I'm not concerned about what anybody else does, I'm concerned about what our board policy says. And if Commissioner Kemper's interpretation is correct, there's no need for her motion or anything else.
Well, I think the reason is for staff's benefit, because I
Right.
believe that staff is hesitant to approve them without the board approval, because that's what has been done in the past. So I think staff wants the understanding that yes, they can move forward, they can provide commissioner reimbursements without the board approving them.
That's quite a bit of liability you're placing on staff, though.
Yeah.
All they have to do is
I believe that the
substantiate.
motion merely talks about, and what the board has asked us to do to this point, Commissioner Sterling, is to review the request for accuracy. We're not approving, we're just reviewing the request for accuracy.
Same as you do for employees.
Right, same thing.
I don't know, Mr. Cardwell, were you going to add something there to help us with this issue, or did you have an idea?
Well, it would seem to me that if the ORS, I interpret the ORS, which I'm not really doing, if you vote on this, you're voting on your commissioner reimbursements. So how can you do that?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you,
That's
Mike.
not-
Could you speak up?
Yeah,
You're not-
no, this
you're
is
not
not really a
voting
vote
for-
to approve your reimbursement. This is simply a vote on the process.
It's like in the vote
For
process,
getting,
how to
for getting reimbursement. I don't think.
But you're
that-
saying it's okay though.
That doesn't present, yeah, you're saying okay to the process, but that's not a conflict of interest where you vote to approve a process.
Well,
Because if that were the case, we wouldn't be able to vote on any sort of board policy in regards to
Right.
commissioner reimbursements.
Right.
That's true.
so what does board policy say?
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, what it states,
You have it
well,
right
I
there,
have a
right?
copy of it, you can
It's
go and review it,
1.6.
but Commissioner Kemper is correct.
And so the requirements are that, if there's a report as a part of it, the report must be made, right?
It's
Required.
it's in the policy, yes,
That's
it
in the
needs to be
policy,
written
okay.
or oral,
Okay.
yes.
So, and I don't dispute that at all. The question is, how, and I think this is where we kind of got off track the last time in this discussion. We're asking staff to take responsibility then for confirming that the conditions for reimbursement have been met. And
The only condition that
Nobody
I
knows
see in the policy is that if you're attending, well, first of all, in order to be eligible for reimbursement, you have to be assigned a responsibility area. Or if you're gonna go, let's say, to the SDAO conference, if that's an authorized meeting, which is really the only thing that the statute requires, then you would come back with the report to that meeting, you would attach it to your expense report, we would review it for accuracy, and then we would cut a check if this motion passed.
But how but then there's the issue of, I think for any outside meeting report is required. That's what policy
And
says.
she's not changing that at all. She's leaving the policy alone. She's just saying by motion, you're really allowing staff, if the requirements of the policy are met, to cut a check.
So that would be asking staff to take the responsibility for establishing that a commissioner has met the requirement.
I'm sure they're not going to have to go to every board and see whether you went to that meeting.
You're still allowed to police your fellow commissioners,
Yeah.
we're just not voting for it in a meeting. You can do your own policing. If you have a concern, you can bring it up. The onus is actually on the commissioner asking for the expense reimbursement. And if they're doing it in a way that they shouldn't be, there are agencies that can take a look at that.
I'm not arguing, I'm simply asking a question. I was only asking for an answer, not a lecture. Thank you. So I go back to my question. If there is no requirement for the board to do anything, why do we need a motion?
I already stated to clarify to
Just
staff that they,
because, and look, there's been so much discussion about whether or not the general manager has the authority to do something or not. We've established as a matter of practice that you want the board to approve it. Statutorily, that's not a requirement. Statutorily, you're authorized to receive the stipend for $50, that's what we mean. It is a board-imposed process that the board votes, but as you look at your policy, there's nothing in that policy that requires that.
Then the next question is, I'm not trying to.
No, I don't hear you saying that.
I just want to make sure we're right. So where does the requirement that the treasurer has to sign it come from? Is that in policy?
That's in the policy.
Okay.
And you're not touching that.
Okay, so then the procedure is, then really, the treasurer is the policeman. I mean, I don't want to use that term, that's Mr. Keogh's word.
Or we could,
So it is the treasurer then who has the responsibility of signing it, which then moves it forward to be paid, correct?
I think let me kind of,
I mean,
I'm
that's my
sure to be
question.
along with it, but I think what the board has, many treasurers, I think, since I've been here, have said, I feel uncomfortable signing this until somebody has vetted the numbers to make sure that they're accurate. So staff, at board's direction, has been vetting the numbers. Then the treasurer signs it. But it's really the board policing its own. It's not staff's responsibility.
Yeah, no, I understand that. The question I'm asking is, then, and the arithmetic, I'm grateful for having any of my arithmetic errors corrected. But when the treasurer signs it, then the treasurer is saying this is appropriate to pay. And upon the treasurer's signature, it will then be paid. That's my question.
So if there's any difficulty, the treasurer will be responsible,
No,
should an
the
investigation
commissioner-
reveal that there's fraud anywhere.
Well,
no,
but
the
I would-
commissioner that's making the expense request is the one that will be held liable.
No,
But I would-
I don't know, not when you have somebody signing the
I
document.
say, I'll recommend something for you. You take the treasurer out of the policy because I'm not signing.
It's not in the policy.
I can't blame you a bit.
That's
No,
what
it
we
is
should
in
treasurer
policy.
out of policy.
No,
I agree.
I just checked, there's nothing in here in policy
There has to be
that
checks
says
and
that
balances.
the board treasurer signs commissioner reimbursement.
What we just said.
But that's been our practice. Is that
It's
the
not
board-
Oh,
in
no,
here.
but I asked you if it's in policy.
It is
it
not in policy, no,
I
it is not.
understood.
Under duties of the
Okay,
treasurer, it's
so
not
you
there.
misspoke.
No.
Okay, since this is important, let's get Dean's,
It's not in the policy that the treasurer
Well,
signs it.
okay, so I had two different versions. Mr. Moore said he misspoke. I just would be much more comfortable having counsel tell us, then everybody can stop worrying.
Yeah, I was just surprised when I looked at the policy that it wasn't there, because I had always assumed that it was.
That's the problem with those urban legends.
Okay,
Okay, Dora, can you call the vote, please?
So the
Wait,
treasurer
let's-
does not have to sign
let's
it by
please
policy.
just let-
Right,
It doesn't
Commissioner
under
Holloway,
duties
that's
of,
it.
okay.
Yeah,
it's not a treasurer
I'd like to
duty.
have Dean's answer. Because if that's the case, it's fine with me.
And that also satisfies the auditor situations where you have the conflict of interest when you're signing your own thing. So for example, Mr. Sterling, if an employee turns in an expense request, we look at it now for accuracy. We look at it to see, well, did somebody authorize this or not? But if we later find out that somebody had put something down there that they shouldn't put down there, it's on the employee, and it's a disciplinary issue in that particular case. And so essentially,
I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense, that's irrational.
no.
Why would the employee, one of our staff here, be held responsible for doing some mathematics to make sure the columns add up?
Well, that's what I
They're
just
not
said.
responsible to find out if someone went to a conference or ate a meal or something like that, they're just doing the mathematics.
Well, I think that we're in agreement in terms of what I said. So for example, if you were an employee of CRW and there's a conference in Eugene, and you put down that you had 3 meals when you only had 2 meals, I wouldn't know that, even though I'm signing your expense report.
You have to provide receipts.
Okay?
You have to provide receipts for
Yeah,
this.
or let's say, sometimes somebody says, okay, it's a de minimis expense, or whatever the case may be, I don't know. I'm just saying is that we go through to try to verify that the expenses are legitimate. If somebody is behaving in a fraudulent way, and you subsequently find out that they've been fraudulent, then they would be subject to disciplinary action, up to and including termination.
Well, that applies to staff, you can't fire a commissioner.
Well, and I shouldn't as a board member. I mean, as a staff person, that's really not my responsibility.
And I do in fact remember the auditor's recommendation that the board should be approving your expense account.
Well,
Which
the
has not yet
Well,
been
The
implemented.
CFO does it in terms of, I don't.
I think, just to recall Mr. Phelps' brief dissertation this evening, I don't think there's going to be a problem with expenses in the future going forward, Ms. Kemper. I really don't. If you take a
Well,
moment and
there's
recap what Mr. Phillips stated this evening and his brief dissertation, I don't exactly understand specifically what it is you're referring to. The 190 is public now, we're not having secret meetings anymore. Everything's out in the open, so, well, anyway, yeah.
I don't know what he's talking about. Dean, did
The
you
only
find
comment,
anything?
yeah, I could not find anything in the policy that says that the treasurer must sign the expense report. And the only thing that I would recommend is that the form be changed to clearly make it the
Right.
commissioner's responsibility
Right.
that
You don't read it.
this expense report is submitted, by the commissioner under penalties of perjury and falsification.
Yeah.
And if there is somebody, obviously, if somebody catches a commissioner that has falsified a report, that's a crime.
Then should we put that wording in page 3 of the policy book?
Well, I think it should just be on the form, because as a
Yeah.
matter
Oh,
of course,
okay.
We
as
signed
a
it
matter of
temporarily.
course.
Will that cover it okay, Commissioner Kemper, then?
I think that it's, there's nothing in the policy about which form is to be used either, so.
No, the
I-
board has said they were gonna use the same form that employees use.
Yeah.
As a certain-
No.
Under penalty of
Okay.
death, if you falsify something, that's it.
That's just
I
a state
don't
law.
think we've done that, because we haven't been doing it.
Haven't done what?
We haven't said we'll use the same form
You're
staff
not-
uses, because we have not been doing it.
You don't sign a certification when you turn in your expense account?
Yeah, see, I don't think
Yeah,
it's
but
on the
in our
form.
form,
It
It's not on
is,
this
when you
our form,
sign it.
I don't
it's
even
a-
know what the staff form looks like.
There'd be nothing wrong with using this form if the treasurer's signature part is on with it.
See, I don't
So
think
this
it's
is
And
the
we
one- this is the one
certify
you want
it, it's
changed?
true.
Yeah, but we need to put in the wording about perjury.
It says, I hereby certify it's
Staff
true and
suggested-
factual.
Yeah, we'll change it.
And vote.
So the treasurer is another urban legend. I love it.
Dora, can you pull the vote, please?
Well, it just says that the following is true and factual.
Commissioner Cardwell?
Should be.
Abstained.
Commissioner Holloway?
Are we okay, Dean? We're all clear? Yes.
What do you mean we're all clear? We're going to use the verbiage that Mr.
Yeah.
Phillips suggested on the
Right.
document rather than change things and,
Well,
Okay.
no, the motion is still standing, just to clarify the procedure, but the form is then, it's understood that the form is going to be changed to
Right.
have that language contained in it.
thank you, Mr.
And
Phillips.
to have the
Thank you.
treasurer.
And treasurer
signature.
take off.
Yes.
And I don't want that thing to reoccur that happened to that lady.
No. God, no.
Commissioner Kemper?
Oh, did Mr. Sterling answer? I didn't hear.
I haven't got the Commissioner Kemper's vote yet.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling
Yes.
and Commissioner Keyhill.
Yes,
Motion carries 4-0-1.
thank you. Public comment? You were signed up, you're okay, okay, so I move to adjourn.